The big one was Michigan. Michigan polled 2/3 pro-abortion. Okay, here were the Wilkes. And 2 years ago, they had written Handbook on Abortion. And by this time, there were about 1.5 million copies of Handbook on Abortion were circulating. And needless to say, we were central figures at that point. And we were accomplished lecturers, and so when this thing arose in Michigan, maybe it's logical that you invite the Wilkes to talk, but no. They had gotten together up there, and the Catholic and the two pro-life Episcopal dioceses, the Michigan Catholic Conference, the Lutherans, they had all gotten together and decided that we were too radical. We talked about killing babies and explained the methods of doing it. And they said, that'll be counterproductive. Don't let the Wilkes in. And so they pulled together quite a bit of money. They put together their own leaflet, which was, we didn't think very effective. They printed 2 million of them, distributed them all through Michigan, and trained their speakers to use a slide set in lecturing the same way. Now, the heart of this was a series of pictures of fetal development. And they started at the beginning, which was something we had learned was the absolute wrong way to do it. They started with little globs, and then larger globs, and then bigger globs. And now this one had legs, and finally, about 5 months into their pictures, this began to look like human. And so the image that they left was that there's nothing wrong with abortion in the early months. It's only a glob. Our way of doing it, and our slide sets had covered the world by that time, was to start with the known. 20 weeks. Is this a baby? You want to bet. 18, 16, 14 weeks. Is this a baby? Yes. 12, 11, oh, we stopped. Let's talk now. This doesn't look quite so babyish. What do we have here for function? Well, he swallows, he urinates, he etc., feels pain. Must be human yet. 10. One picture you've all seen, those little feet. And that went international, the most widely used photo used in any movement in the history of the world. 10, yeah, those are little feet, people yet. 8, doesn't look quite so human now, but they would tell them, this little guy can urinate already, this guy can grasp an instrument placed in the palm of it, must be human yet. Let's go down to 6 weeks. And we used a picture of a little teardrop of a tubal pregnancy. And you could still count 10 fingers and toes. And then below 5 weeks, we didn't use any pictures because we knew that you would learn by what you looked at. And if this thing didn't look human, then you internalized a personal judgment saying, well, it's not human yet. So below 6 weeks, we had one 5-weeker that looked pretty good. Had a tail, but it looked pretty human. She looked pretty human. Below that, we talked about what was there. And prominently was that the heart begins to beat 3 weeks after conception. And conception is 2 weeks into her monthly 4-week cycle. So that when she's only 1 week overdue, the little heart begins to beat. So this brought it right down. And that was our slide set.
And we had the heartbeat.
And
we had the heartbeat. A doctor had given us a recording of the heartbeat of a little baby at 6 weeks old. And when the groups would hear from, right away, they knew that had to be a baby if it had a heartbeat. And so when they finally tallied up the votes, you can guess what happened. We couldn't find what had happened in Michigan until our friends called us. And then we knew if it had been a victory for the pro-aborts, it would have been front page. But in the North Dakota, where do you think we finally found that? Page 14, about that many lines. And that was typical in those days of the media. They're getting a little better now, but in those days, it was a struggle. So
the reason was that 10 days before the election, the Michigan people got spastic. They were behind by 65 to 35. And some of them phoned us, panicky. What we're using doesn't work. Will you come up and lecture and use your slide sets? Well, the committee, that was blasphemy. But we went up to the Upper Peninsula. By the time we finished lecturing there, they had asked us to stop at Traverse City. By that time, they asked us to Alma, Battle Creek. We talked in about 15 different cities, ending up in Ann Arbor, and did all of that within a week, and then went home. And so we had a few of a brand new brochure we had put out.
Life or Death, which showed the developing baby and also showed the methods of abortion. Very simple brochure, but very descriptive. And each city ordered tons of them. And we said, how do you ever get them out and how do you get people to look at them? They did a very clever thing. They had the mimeographs go on day and night, and it said on the one side, for adult reading only. They got everybody, all kinds of school children, volunteers, armies of people to fold those over a life or death, and then they distributed them to millions around the country, or millions around Michigan. And they couldn't believe, but I will tell you what happened at one point. We were in the middle of this marathon of speaking and changing their game plan. And the head guy that had planned this said, well, I just want to tell you that if we lose, you'll know who's responsible because you've come up here and changed it. And I said to Jack, I don't know how you feel, but I'm going to pray so hard.
We went home. It was a week before the election, and the few we had passed out in all of these cities had hardly dented what the need was. So our publishing house called us, and they said, this was the Monday, a week before the election, and they mentioned the name of two women. Did we know them? We said, yes. Well, do you know their financial situation? I said, yeah, they're both wives of postal delivery men. Oh, why? Well, they've just ordered 2 million copies of the Life or Death brochure. Well, what's that going to cost them? Well, $20,000. Oh. Well, we've decided, this was a Church of Christ publishing house. They were very pro-life. They said, we've got it all figured out. If you give us the green light today, Monday, we'll start the presses going tonight, and they'll go for 48 hours. And as the brochures come off the press, we'll be cutting and binding them. We've got several semi-trucks who are going to be driving these up to Michigan. We're going to start distributing them on Thursday. We should have all 2 million out by Sunday. And they told us about folding them. Why couldn't you? Oh, we'll have the Catholic schools, children doing that all over Michigan, and some evangelical schools. And can they pay for them? Yes. Anyway, they did, and as Barbara said, that it went from 65 against to 65 for.